this is a caveat. If you are struggling to get your protein, something that I found out last week, if you go to Publix, there's these things called apron meals, and it's super fresh, it's raw, it's whole foods, and you get the food, and it's between anywhere from 400 to 600 calories. Normally they're right around 500, but they have like 50 to 60 grams of protein. Super clean. They're $7.50. You just take the stuff off. You put them in the oven for like 30 to 50 minutes. It cooks it, and then you can eat it, and it tastes amazing. It was one of the best discoveries I think I've ever had when it comes to this. So you can cook two at the same time, eat one, and then use the other one for like meal prep.
Amazing.
And it's cheaper than going to McDonald's, unless you go real cheap. But anyway, my kids order everything.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
So check out Apron Meals in Publix.
Is there a meal you remember enjoying a ton, or particularly from it?
Yes, I had it for lunch. The Monterey chicken and corn salsa thing. I don't think they call it corn salsa, but that's what it is. I think
some fancier name.
It's like chicken breast, and then they roll the chicken breast, and inside there's like this cheese thing, and then they have this corn salsa on the side, dude. And then I won't lie, I also got the flank steak, which I'm grilling this evening. It's a flank steak. They get a flank steak, and then they put in mozzarella with spinach inside of it, and then you can either bake it in the oven or you can grill it. I had one of those, I think yesterday or the day before. I'm grilling the second one. It was stupid good. Ooh, and I'm doing that with jalapeno poppers. Hey, Rackaroo.
And for context for everyone, usually a meal prep service or something like that is at least $10 a meal. So to hear it for $7.50 is pretty impressive. Second cheapest I ever saw was Clean Eats, which is like $7 per.
Thank you, Riker.
Is it Clean Eats? Do you order those, or is it also like at a grocery store?
So you can do both. So it's a restaurant, but they also have like a freezer where you can just walk in and grab it out of the freezer and try them one at a time. But they also have it where you can order ahead and be like, hey, I want 10 meals to pick up on Sunday. Boom, let's grab it. Yeah.
Yeah, the one in Winston-Salem's owned by a guy named Brian. I do jujitsu with him. And he owns one.
All those cards. Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering why.
Yeah. Yeah, Brian Starms.
Mm-hmm.
It's right by LA Fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mean, the different here's my take between the two. So Clean Eats, it's prepared. You just have to nuke it. So typically that means it's not as fresh and it's a little bit drier, but it's faster, more convenient. Apron meals are raw, but after you cook them, they're like, I'm really picky when it comes to leftovers. Like if it's my leftovers, I'll eat them, but I don't want to buy leftovers. So anyway, I prefer the apron meals, but you can do either or as long as you're consistent, or you can just do it yourself. I mean, that's even better.
Agreed. Yeah, because people underestimate how easy meal prepping is. It's pretty much you just make one meal times 5, and it's like maybe 5 minutes extra.
Yeah, so that's true. So like what Beth does typically is she'll just make dinner, and she just makes enough for like 2 extra meals. And then I eat that for lunch and dinner, or lunch or breakfast and lunch. Unless I'm doing intermittent fasting, then one, but super easy.
Oh yeah, for sure. Jeff, I thought I said, were you saying something earlier? Hopefully we didn't cut you off.
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay, cool. Sweet. Laura, you got anything come up? I saw you're kicking butt, celebrating, was it in the 170s now?
Yeah. No, just, like you guys are talking about having problems trying to get enough protein. And, I went to the beach this past weekend and I had Happy Meals and ice cream, but I know that wasn't good. But, just trying to struggle with trying to figure out if you're with a bunch of people that doesn't eat clean and you're trying to eat good, and, and I probably should have got something else at McDonald's other than a Happy Meal, but I had a coupon. So, everything at the beach is $200, even a Happy Meal. So, but no, just finding struggling, trying to, figure out how to eat when you're around a bunch of people that doesn't have anything in the refrigerator that's good, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions on that, Lori. What were you staying at friend's house, or was it like a rented beach home, or?
I have two sisters down there, so I stay with one sister and then the other sister. So,
Gotcha.
um,
Gotcha. So in that kind of a scenario where it's like where you feel, I would assume, maybe I'm wrong, you feel kind of awkward bringing in outside food to eat something different than what the family's eating. Typically, the way I approach that is one, I'll bring protein powder, which is obviously less than ideal than whole food, but I'll bring protein powder in a shaker and I'll pound that for the protein. And then typically what I'll do is like when I'll do intermittent fasting, mainly just so it reduces the amount of calories I consume. So let's say I know where there's going to be a big family dinner or something, and they're going to order pizza out or whatever it is.
right.
I basically will do intermittent fasting for that event and try to save up the bulk of my calories for that. And I won't hit my protein, which isn't ideal, but that makes it so that I don't do as much damage calorically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel bad about bringing food. I have brought food before from home, you know, I'll bring some stuff I have here and like I'll bring in some eggs and, you know, protein powder, protein bars, things like that. And so it's just a struggle sometimes because usually when I come back from the beach, I haven't really gained a lot of weight, but you know, I've put on a few ounces here and there from.
I mean, if you only put on a few ounces after going to the beach, that's a W.
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, that's how I would look at it. Because like, if I'm not thinking about it and I go on vacation and I'm not intentional, I gain an easy 3-5 pounds without
Right.
trying.
Yeah.
So if you only gained a couple ounces, I would count that as a W.
Yeah,
Especially,
because it's so hard for me to lose weight with my, you know, my age and you know, all this stuff, but it's really hard for me. It's a struggle. So yeah, I think that's kind of a win too. So you're right.
Mhm. Yeah, and the magic is in the compound interest, is in the consistency over time. So like, how long have you been doing resistance training?
I've only been doing it with you guys, so only about a month, maybe.
Okay, so
Yeah,
what
you
you're gonna
guys are
know,
the only workouts I get, really. That's
that's
sad.
well,
I'm sorry.
no, that's not. So like, I only work out 3 times a week. Okay.
Yeah,
And typically, if you have a crazy job and you deal with a lot of things, there's a lot of stress or whatnot. Not saying you are,
right.
like 2 to 3 workouts a week, resistance training is more than enough, assuming your nutrition is on point. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, you'll do what I did when I was younger and you just overtrain. Like this was one of the dumbest things. Like I fell in love with strength training at Christmas when I was 13. My mom and dad got me a barbell and the book Weightlifting for Dummies. And from that moment on, I was obsessed. And in that book, it said, hey, don't overtrain. And I was like, they're a bunch of weenies. And I did every exercise in that book every day for 2 weeks until I was virtually falling apart, which I was being stupid. But I still didn't learn. And I habitually overtrained for the vast majority of my life. Just because we have that mindset of more is better, more is better. And when it comes
Right.
to resistance training and losing weight, it's about time under tension. It's about being consistent. Because if, like, the analogy I like to use, if when you were at the beach and you get burnt, there's like a sunburn, you get a really bad sunburn, the next day, do you go out there and get fried again? Maybe you do, but you shouldn't. You should let your body rest and recover. When you do resistance training, you're breaking your body down, you're creating micro tears, and then you need to give your body time to repair, just like it needs to repair from a sunburn. But what do we typically do? We smash ourselves, we destroy our bodies doing resistance training, and then the next day we do it all over again. And then we do it all over again. And then 6 months passes by and we're like, wow, why haven't I changed? Why haven't I gotten stronger? That's why. So I guess where I was going with that is, as long as, like, you just started, you're going to get the best strength gains in the first like 3 to 5 months and you're going to build like more muscle and it's going to increase your metabolism. And then assuming your nutrition is on point, like once you consistently get that, enough protein, it dramatically changes everything, how you feel, how you look. And then it's just a matter of being consistent for the rest of your life. Right. but it's definitely worth the investment.
Yeah, I'm getting stronger, I can tell. And you know, my weight's coming off a little bit at a time, but it's coming off. So hopefully I can get to where, like I say, I can learn how to eat when I'm not at home and you know, just figure all that out. So I'll get there.
Yeah.
And to touch
Thanks
on
for
that,
all the help and the advice. I got some good stuff out of that.
Yeah, no, anytime. That's what we're here for.
oh yeah. And to follow up on that too, because I sent a video response to you this morning, I believe, Lori. So this will review some of that too. But there's many things you can do with that. So one I mentioned that a lot of people underestimate is like if you're going to the beach with someone or like spending time on a vacation with someone staying there, typically, at least I'd hope they'd be someone you're close enough to where you could even just have an honest conversation with them and be like, hey, so to be honest, typically we eat this way. I'm actually looking to make some changes. I've been losing weight. It's been feeling really good for me. Do you think we could accommodate my meals when we go grocery shopping or going out to a restaurant? Boom, boom, boom. And they could say no, but I don't think if anyone gets mad at you for asking that question, that I don't think we should be hanging out with them anyway. And so people really underestimate that. Because I even just had a client who was on vacation for 2 weeks with a good friend of his. He's like, dude, every time I go there, I gain like 10 pounds. Like, well, let's have this talk. And the guy was like relieved. He's like, oh, thank God, because
Come
I
on.
only want to have 1 or 2 meals. Because if we eat like that the entire week, I feel like crap. So I'm relieved you brought it up. And yeah, I'm more than happy to do that. Let's even work out together. And he was terrified of the trip. I had that phone call with him where I talked to him to tell his friend that. He came back. He's like, oh, I feel so much better about the trip. He came back from the trip actually a pound lighter, which is a huge W. So that's
Yeah.
one. And then two, while eating out, as you mentioned, there's a couple options. So I like what Kellen said, where having snacks that are readily available will help a ton. So, turkey jerky, beef jerky, if it's not super highly processed stuff. But those protein shakes or protein bars can go a long way to be something that's easy to grab. You can have right before the meal. So you're not coming into the meal absolutely ravenous. It helps also to boost up that protein goal that we're trying to hit, because obviously eating out a lot, it tends to be very carb dense and fat dense. And so you tend to hit your calories before your protein goal. So it'll kind of help mitigate that effect. And then the rules of thumb that I typically do for eating out, and it applies to almost any location, which helps a ton, is pick an entree that tends to be a lean protein as best you can. And I'll give examples. Number two is avoid high calorie sides. So fries, mozzarella sticks, onion rings, all that nonsense. And then three, the calories in the drinks are something that affects us a ton. So sodas,
Yes.
lemonades, alcohol. Yeah. And they're not satiating at all because they're not very voluminous. They have none of the protein, fiber, naturally occurring fats, everything I mentioned that makes us feel full. And so for an example, even fast food places, people really underestimate the power of planning and also like thinking ahead. It's like when I go to Wendy's, instead of getting like a combo where it's like you get like a fried chicken sandwich with fries and a soda, if you replace those fries and soda with just like 2 entrees, it's like 2 grilled chicken sandwiches, it'll come out to somewhat similar calories, double the protein, and you'll feel way more full and way more satiated. Because I can't even tell you enough. Yeah, Kellen sent the dining out guide too, which I sent as well.
Yeah.
Super helpful because it breaks it down by specific locations. Like if you go to a burger joint, here's what you can order. If you go to a taco place, if you go to a steakhouse, it mentions all those. But those 3 things will ring true for almost any restaurant. Like for instance, I had someone who went to Olive Garden recently, like, I don't know what to get off the menu. And I'm like, well, if you look at the menu, the one thing that seems optimal is the salmon and veggies. And then the salad, keep the breadsticks to a minimum. And they came out of Olive Garden only having consumed like 600 calories and they had like 35 grams of protein. I'm like, dude, that's like a really big win. And then
Huge.
yeah. So like those 3 principles will follow you anywhere. And then as well, I say this to all my clients as well. And you, like, if you know and can plan ahead for where you're going out, even just send me a picture of the menu and I'll just look over and pick stuff off for you. The reason I go into that detail is that my long-term goal is for us to be teaching you habits that are sustainable. So you can go into any place on the fly and be like, okay, I'm picking something that's based off of lean protein. So something that's ideally not fried. We're picking like a sirloin instead of a ribeye. Typically they'll have the calories laid out too. So if you can find the protein option that's the least amount of calories, that goes a long way. So all those will be huge, no matter the place that you're at. And then,
So Noah,
yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I was at some friends of mine gathered at a Mexican restaurant here in High Point, and that place is it's all carbs. I mean, beans, rice, So I'm looking at the menu and I wound up getting the fajitas. Okay. And no rice, no beans. And I just had them do a little bit of extra guacamole salad. And it came out pretty good. I think it was a little over 500 calories, but it was very filling and, not a lot of carbs, a lot of protein.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
you
no,
can do it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
100%, Jeff. That's my go-to when I go to Mexican too, is fajitas.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say the same thing. Because you'd be
Yeah.
surprised. For instance, at Chipotle, their burrito alone or their tortilla alone is 340 calories. Just the tortilla.
That's
Yeah.
the tortilla.
Yeah, that's just the start.
Oh yeah. And here's the other thing too that I'll point out while eating out. So like if logging the apps like MyFitnessPal or like our Just Eat Fitness app, keep an eye on the menu because a lot of people say as well, they're like, oh, like it's hard for me to tell because I'll go to log it in the app and like I just find a burger. I can't find the specific restaurant. There's a few options there. One is a place like Chipotle, for example, has a calculator. You can go online and put in all the stuff you get, and then you can just try to make it match. So if you look up Chipotle chicken bowl, right? One person might just get lettuce, chicken, pico, and corn. Their bowl is going to be way fewer calories than someone who gets double rice, beans, 3 servings of sour cream, cheese. Like that's going to be twice the calories.
Yeah.
So what I do is go through the calculator, and then let's say the bowl in the app is like 900 calories, and the one in the calculator is 1200. What you can do, what's most important for weight loss is for the calories to match. The macronutrients might be a little off, but that's close enough. Is just adjust the serving size of the bowl until it matches the calories for what you found online. Or if you're at a place that's like a mom and pop restaurant, see if the calories match. If they don't have the calories listed out, then find something somewhat similar. So an example I use is like, let's say you go to like some random small Italian place and they have like a lasagna. You're not going to be able to log, okay, there's like probably 2 ounces of noodles, 3 ounces of sauce, 1 ounce of cheese. You're going to be like,
That is
okay,
hard.
like, yeah. So you could pull up like Olive Garden lasagna, for example. That'll be somewhat close enough. If it's like a menu item with discrete options, that's a lot easier because like, let's say you had like steak, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Then you could be like, okay, this is a 6-ounce sirloin. This is a cup of mashed potatoes. This is 2 cups of green beans. We're good to go. So then you don't need to log that specific restaurant's menu item. Another thing to consider too is like if you look at like a burger, I see people, they'll log like a homemade burger or like just like a burger while they're eating out. And I'll see it's like 300 calories. And I'm like, okay, so let's check on that because many times, yeah, if you have a burger from like McDonald's with nothing on it, maybe that's like 350, 400. If you go to like Buffalo Wild Wings, that's going to be like 900 calories.
Yes, easy.
Yeah. And so just glancing at the menu to see if the calories match what you had is like 90% of the battle there. And that'll let you know and plan ahead. Oh, another thing too for you when eating out is log ahead. So look at the menu
Yes.
so you can plan ahead. Because I have people who like, a client went to Texas Roadhouse and they had 2 rolls and some other appetizer. And they realized when they logged it after, they're like, shoot, I had, yeah, like 700 calories worth of food before.
Yeah.
So log ahead of time so that you can plan for it. And that goes a much longer way as well.
And then another thing to like, the reason eating out habitually isn't the best like weight loss approach is they can have a 20% margin of error when it comes to their calories and their macronutrients. So, in which way do you think they err on that sucker? Right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's so like even Doritos, like anything packaged, they can be off by 20%. So let's just so like it was a meme I think I saw that was pretty stinking funny. It had a guy, he got a Dorito, he had a food scale and he put it on top and the food scale said 0 and he goes, oh, and then he eats it. Then he gets one more chip and he puts it on the food scale and it still said 0. So he eats it and he's like, my trainer told me I have to log all my food. This keeps saying 0, so I guess it doesn't count. And he ate a whole, like he was being funny, but so you just be cognizant of that. But I thought that was hilarious.
That actually perfectly resembles another thing that happens too, where you see a lot of 0-calorie like seasonings or sauces or stuff like that. What they can do sometimes is they make the serving size so small that then the quote unquote margin of error makes it 0. So if you use a normal amount, it'll still come out to X amount of calories, but it says 0 on the package.
Exactly.
So disingenuous. That pisses me off so much.
Yes.
So yeah, be wary of those as well. But yeah, love that. So hope that helps too, Lori. And then, like I said, if there's any more context, message me in the app, or we can always do a phone call too. Because yeah, eating out is one of the biggest ones. And then as far as protein goes in general, like when at home, people ask me like, what is a protein source? And I send a list too, and I can help them. But like, good rule of thumb is obviously you can get to more whole foods and stuff too. But the greater the ratio of calories to proteins, like the lower the calories are and the higher the protein is, typically the better the source it is. And so the example I always use, and Kellen's probably heard me say this 1,000 times, so sorry, but people, when they first come in, they're always like, oh yeah, peanut butter, that's a great source of protein, right? I'm like, well, let's do the math. One serving is about 200 calories, I think it's like 180, and about like 6-7 grams of protein. If you ate only peanut butter for the entire day, let's say you have 1,500 calories, 1,600 calories. So that'd be 8 servings times 6 is like 42 grams of protein before you hit your calories for the day. That's not an ideal protein source versus something like chicken or sirloin steak or even salmon or shrimp. If you ate only that, you would definitely hit your protein goal before you go over your calories. Just to kind of to give the glimpse of where all the other calories come from.
Because peanut butter is predominantly all fat.
Exactly.
Good, healthy fat, but still predominantly fat. And super small.
Yeah, super dense. I have the same thing for beans too. Beans will be more filling because they're higher fiber and stuff. They have more micronutrients that are useful too. But if you eat only beans, you'll go way over on calories and carbs way before you hit your protein goal.
Yes.
And so they're good for incidental protein, but I wouldn't consider them a quote unquote protein source or a lean protein.
Yeah. Because they have just as many carbohydrates as typically it's just as many carbohydrates as protein. So you're doubling your calories.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty much.
Yeah. So that's the explanation behind if someone says like, oh, pork is typically not a quote unquote good source of protein. There's leaner cuts, obviously, but it'll be majority fat versus something like turkey, which is going to be like, what, like 93% protein? Something along those lines.
What about cheating? Do you guys ever have a day where you want a hamburger or you want some ice cream or you want a Snicker bar? I mean, there's got to be at some point a time. I'm not saying that I'm like that all the time, but sometimes I am like that. Sometimes I want a Snicker bar or I want a cone of ice cream or
100%.
Something that's not good.
I mean, well, here's the thing though, is this is, and Noah might have a different opinion on this than me, but that I wouldn't call it bad food. Okay. In the sense, like if you have a mindset that some food is good, some food is bad, that, and I don't like necessarily calling it cheating either, because what that does is a lot of people will gear up for a cheat day. I deserve to do this to my body and to eat all this quote unquote bad food. And if you have that mindset, and I had it for a long time in my life. I was like, I'm going to eat super clean, 6 days of the week. And then stinking Sunday, I am going to tear it up. That was a terrible mindset that honestly really got me stuck for a long time. Now, what I do instead is when I'm going to, let's say if I'm going to have ice cream or Easter Snickers, I don't have the mindset of I deserve this. It's a cheat day. I'm just like, hey, 80%, 90% of the time I eat whole foods. If 10%, 20% of what I consume today comes from an ice cream or a Snickers, it's not that big of a deal because 80, 90% of the time I'm on track. Yeah. Does that make sense? But what happens when you have a cheat meal mindset is I'm going to have a burger and fries. And right after I have the burger, we this is funny. A lot of people plan really, really hard not to plan their foods. It's so hard to plan my food. I just don't want to do it. And then cheat day comes around. For breakfast, I'm going to this restaurant. I'm getting donuts and I'm getting this iced coffee. After that, I'm going to stinking Bojangles and I'm getting a biscuit and fried chicken. And then after that, for dinner, we're going to do this. And I'm like, bro, you never plan your food, but your cheat day is the most well mapped out thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And then they're like, oh yeah. I was like, you can. So it's okay to consume those foods. It's just the amount and how often. But yeah.
If you log it in there, then sometimes you'll see that, that half a cup of ice cream or whatever it was that you had, or the Easter candy is not, it's not so far outside of the
macros,
calories and your macros that you can find a way to make stuff fit, just because you log it and you see.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't talking about heavy duty cheat days. I was just meaning from time to time, if you want a piece of pizza, maybe one piece of pizza and don't eat the whole pizza kind of thing.
Yeah, no, but like what Laura said, that's, you can totally do that. And then, but I'll tell you a story of me personally. So when I like you have your calories, you have your protein, you have your macros, right? I used to use those and I'd be like, I hit my calories, I hit my protein, but I ate a lot of garbage to get there. What do you think? How do you think? And then if I eat mainly whole foods and do the same thing, which one do you think I feel better, I look better, and I'm not nearly as hungry or have irritable, have as many cravings?
You probably
The
ate more
times,
with the second version of that also.
yes. So I was guilty of, well, it fit my macros, so it worked, bro. But results, it didn't feel nearly as good. So you can just, so there's a caveat there, but for the most part, be flexible with your macros. Let's say you're gonna you're gonna have a bowl of ice cream. Like my wife Beth always has a bowl of ice cream or two, whatever. But like if you log it ahead of time and you plan around that, you're good to go for the most part, assuming you know your calories are good and your protein's good.
Yeah, I try to get that low calorie ice cream, which I really like that Yasso and those low calorie ice cream bars. Those are pretty good.
Oh yeah, you beat me to it. So yeah, because I do agree with Kellen on that one. Where I'll add as well, kind of like you said, Lori, finding lower calorie alternatives that scratch that same itch tends to go a really long way. So I love Yasso bars. It just tastes up like straight up like mint chocolate chip ice cream, and they're only
They're
100
good.
calories a piece. Yeah, they're so good.
Mint chocolate chip.
Dude, that's the best one they have. Oh, it's so good.
No, it's the fudge sickle. That's the best
Oh,
one.
See, I'm not a big fan of I like chocolate to be like sprinkled in. I don't like to be the main, but they're.
Yeah.
Dude, whoever puts mint in chocolate should be exported from the United States.
Well, it's funny. I usually don't like it, but for these ones, it's amazing. The other ones are a little too sweet for me. So that's.
So like, oh, it's disgusting. Mint chocolate chip is disgusting. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Beth will buy mint chocolate chip because she knows I won't touch it. Or the kids, because it's nasty. But anyway.
That's perfect. So yeah, so finding lower calorie alternatives to scratch the same itch to keep you sane is totally fine. Two, like you said, planning ahead and logging it so that you know, you'll find your psychology changes around it too, because then you can actually even enjoy it. Instead of being like, oh, I'm having burger and fries, like I'm the worst, I can't believe I'm doing this. You're like, yo, I planned around this. Like this is the day, like I get to actually enjoy this now. It's kind of like having an afternoon. I'm picturing like in college or high school, where like you had a ton of homework to do. If you did it first, and then you get to actually enjoy your day, versus if you had like a paper looming over your head, you're like, oh gosh, like this sucks. I'm just actually delaying the inevitable. So that changes the psychology a lot, especially like the cheat meal. So Kellen put it a really good way. Where like anything could be quote unquote healthy or unhealthy, but everything in moderation has its place. So like an avocado is healthy, has tons of micronutrients that are good for you, a ton of healthy fats that are good for your cholesterol. But if you ate only avocado all day, you'd be terrible. You wouldn't hit your protein, to go way over on calories. You'd have way too many fats. Your blood levels would be like all sorts of whacked out. But avocados are quote unquote healthy, right? And so the other thing I'll even say too is a lot of people, they don't pay really close attention to when they have those meals. So number one, when I talk to them, they're like, yo, I need this cheat meal. And I'm like, are you craving that meal because you dislike what you're eating now? And sometimes it's a yes, and in which case we can find recipes they enjoy more. But sometimes they're like, oh, I didn't even realize I enjoy a majority of the food that I have. Like for me, I crave like Buffalo Wild Wings is my treat, where it's like once every like 2 to 3 months, I'm like, yes, I love this. But I'll have it and I'm like, literally the food I make for myself at home, I enjoy more. Like I just genuinely like it. And so it doesn't feel like I'm restraining and holding out for that cheat meal. And then when I pay attention, when I actually do eat out like that, I'm like, I actually don't enjoy this as much. When I cook home, it tastes better. And also what I feel afterwards is just so much worse. I feel lethargic. I feel bloated. I just feel tired. And also it's more expensive. So like when you really pay attention to the entire experience, not just when you're eating it, it tends to almost not feel like a cheat. It's just kind of like a break. And then you come back and you're like, okay, cool. Like my normal quote unquote diet is actually sustainable, enjoyable. And I'd focus more on making those meals more enjoyable and then not beating yourself up for those times off. So like cheat meal, quote unquote, like Kellen said, tends to not be the best way to put it, if that helps. Yeah, I do get that a lot. And also it's extra important to log it because a lot of people underestimate just how much damage you can do in one meal or one day. Because let's say you're 2,000 calories to maintain weight and you're having a calorie deficit of 500, so you're eating 1,500 calories. So that 500 calorie deficit over a week would have you lose about a pound. If you get to the weekend and you don't log, you can easily have a meal, like I said, like at Texas Roadhouse, the rolls themselves are like 200 calories. So if you have like 3 rolls and a dessert and an appetizer, that alone is you're above by like 3,000 calories. All your calories that you were under for that whole week cancel out, and you were actually in a 500 calorie deficit or even maintenance. and you don't even know. And then next thing you know, you're like, this diet's stupid. I worked so hard Monday through Saturday. Like it's pointless. Who cares? So that's why it's extra important to also plan ahead so that you can make sure you're not working against all the work you're doing throughout the week.
100%.
I had someone say, oh, I didn't, I said, is that all you yesterday? And they were like, no, I had spaghetti. I had pasta last night. I just didn't want to log it. So when we pulled up my Fitness Pal, before they ate the pasta, which was the last thing they ate that day, they still had 1,100 calories left. And I was like, that probably fit just fine in there. So they ended up feeling bad and guilty. And that's not the point of eating it. So
It's really not.
but if
It's
you
like,
you log it ahead of time, you put it in there, you're like, this totally fits. And then you feel really good about getting to eat something that you're really looking forward to, and it fits in there. So you don't have this kind of head hanging, oh no.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well put, Laura. So really good questions, Lori. I love it. Anyone else have anything come to mind too?
Where do you get Yasso bars?
Ooh. Amazon, Walmart, Costco. Although Costco, I believe, be warned, Kellen. I believe
Amazon?
you
They
can
ship ice cream? Really?
just for like some weird, Valerie said there's teeter. So most grocery stores have them. It's just a matter of how many flavors.
Oh.
Walmart, I know it has at least 4 different ones. Costco has the best value, but they only have mint chocolate chip as far as I checked. So
Food Lion has them.
there you go. Yeah, absolutely. And they're so good. It's like a ritual for me and my girlfriend to have one every night. Another one too that actually is funny to me, because for me, I'm a big texture person. It's like the bomb pops, like they're like red, white, and blue. Those ones, they're only 40 calories a piece, and they have like that perfect kind of like melt in your mouth texture. Those ones I find very good as well, because I have to do talking like this all day, so my throat hurts. And I'm like, I just need something to like cool it down and make it feel soothed, and those go a long way for me for only 40 calories.
Yeah, no. I do not crave ice cream. I always crave salty stuff.
Me too.
Like my downfall, like back in the day, was typically chips. I could destroy chips. So even when I was 308 pounds and I played football, like I wouldn't let my roommates or me have chips in the house, because as soon as it went, it was game over.
Same. I remember when they had like those Lay's stacks, which is like their competition with the Pringles, the salt
Yeah.
and vinegar ones that you could get a whole tube for only like $1. And oh my gosh, I'd eat half of that in like a meal without even realizing. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was like 450 calories worth of chips.
No.
Yeah, same. So yeah, salties are the ones that get me too. Which is awesome.
Mm. Well, anything else, guys?
Good questions thus far.
Or gals? Yeah, I know those are good questions.
Oh, excuse me.
Kellen, when you're doing your intermittent fasting, what do you do? How much do you fast? Is it like a certain time during a day, or do you fast one day a week, or for 24 hours? Or
So yeah, that's actually a really good question. So with myself and with clients that I have who do intermittent fasting, I do a scaled approach. And it's typically for people who are significantly overweight, because we're trying to make it so they're no longer diabetic or pre-diabetic. That's the main intent with fat. I mean, those don't have to be the reasons, but that's when it makes the most sense, and it's super effective to regulate someone's blood sugar. So this, everybody's different, but I'm gonna give you a generic answer. Like, this is typically what it looks like. So what I'll tell them is the first month is they're going to eat 3 meals no snacking, and they're going to eat those 3 meals. Sorry, this is the thing, in an 8-hour window. Okay. I don't care whether that means they wake up at 8 and they have a meal, but they have an 8-hour window. Okay. That's typically the first month. And they also have a protein goal, but they're the 8-hour window, 3 meals, no snacking. Okay. Phase 2, we take away one of those meals and I say, you have a 6-hour window and you're eating 2 meals a day. Okay. And then the third phase is when we start doing, especially if, and this, once again, this is geared for people who typically are pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic and are trying to regulate their insulin levels. We then have them do a 24-hour fast. And most people, they hear a 24-hour fast, they freak out like, oh my word. But it's actually just going from dinner to dinner or lunch to lunch or breakfast to breakfast. And I'll have them do that 2 times a week. Okay. And assuming they're regulating their glucose and their insulin and whatnot, and actually by this time, generally, they've lost quite a bit of weight. And what fasting does, besides help you losing weight, is psychologically, I've discovered, I don't understand the science behind it, but it really helps people feel like they can control their hunger. A lot of people let hunger bully them, and they feel like they're at the mercy of the hunger bully, and they have to satisfy it or they're going to go nuts. And when you, for whatever reason, when you slowly ramp up your power when it comes to eating, and you can be content or learn to be content even when you're feeling discomfort from hunger, that is super empowering. So like when I do now that I've done the intermittent fasting thing for like 8 months ago, before, let's say when we were traveling and we stopped at, like, my kids wanted to eat at Chick-fil-A or whatever, it was really hard for me to say no to eating fast food. After I did intermittent fasting, it's not even a desire. Like, I'd be like, I'd rather be hungry than eat this cheeseburger at wherever. And I could never have said, and I was a binge eater. Like, that was my thing. For most of my life. Like it's stupid how much food I could eat. But since intermittent fasting and I learned to be content being a little bit hungry. And after a while, the hunger does go away, just FYI. But it's not scary. I'm no longer being bullied by this hunger bully. And that's the most empowering part of it, I think, when it comes to intermittent fasting. Yeah, Jeff?
So, it's interesting when you detox from all the processed food and crap that you've accumulated in your life, and you go and eat cleanly, eat, the portion control, eat the proteins and the veggies and leave off the carbs, all that stuff. Once you do that for a few months, you find yourself in a position where you really don't really miss or want or desire the fast foods or the processed foods anymore, because it's left you.
Yeah.
For me, that's been the case.
And it's because, like, you notice how it makes you feel.
Right.
So
you don't want
it's like, if you go so long without it, and then you're like, I'm gonna have some, I deserve it or whatever. And then you're like, it's satisfying as it hits your lips. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, yummy. But then, like, the after effect is completely not worth it. Like, and like, when I was 308, when I was a big fatty, like, I was like, they're full of crap. I would never feel that way. And it totally does. It totally does. And it's just not worth it. And the difference is like you feel yourself like a Ferrari versus a 1983 Volkswagen Bug. Right? You're giving yourself high octane fuel in your body. You feel like, I'm stinking a Ferrari, I'm a Porsche. And then you give it this, this stinking crap, and you feel like a Volkswagen Bug. That is super true.
I like what you said too about the perspective with hunger too, because a lot of people when they first start, I think being hungry is like a bad sign and they're like doing something wrong and it's a problem. And also it's kind of like in mindfulness, where when you learn to actually sit with negative emotions and negative feelings, and you don't even have to consider it negative, it's just a process your body has of being like, yo, we're having fewer calories than usual. Like, what's going on. And you're like, yo, it's fine. I don't need to give into this. So it's really important for that. Also, as you talked about, it like removes the number of spikes you have with ghrelin. And also, as Kellen said, it regulates your blood sugar levels. So insulin resistance goes down, helps a ton with it as well. It just completely recalibrates your brain for it so that you're like, oh, I'm hungry. That's totally fine. And then also decreases cravings over time. If you look at Dr. Jason Fung, actually has an amazing, it's not quite a TED talk, but it's like an hour-long speech that I'm happy to send to anyone. But he pretty much summarizes his findings. His books are pretty much summaries of his studies. And he has like a speech that's a summary of like 3 of his books. Yeah. Awesome book. But that he gives like a 1-hour speech on YouTube that I could send to anyone if they want, where it just summarizes the entire book in such an easy to digest way with visual aids. And it's amazing. What'd you say, Laura?
You send it to me.
Sounds good. More than happy to. You too, Deb. Sounds great.
Too.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to send all you guys. Or I can even tell you what, I'll link it in the chat here.
No, well, you said something else too, that once you eat at home so much that when you do go out and get something to eat, it's almost disappointing sometimes. I mean, I know there's something you eat it and you're like, oh, this is the best thing ever. But sometimes I found that when I would eat out, I just felt like it just wasn't as good as something that I would make for myself, or it'd be way too salty, or it would just, you wouldn't feel as good after. It just didn't seem like it was worth the calories that you end up getting from something that when you're eating out that you thought would be so great. Or maybe you used to think it was so great and then you go eat it and you're like, oh, it's not great. Since I've been eating differently, this is just heavy and salty and, you know, expensive. I don't know.
Also, the $30 bill tends to like be like, oh, holy crap, I can make this at home for like $4.50. Like I, by principle, I refuse to ever eat pasta at a restaurant because I'm like, I'm not going to pay $15 for something that cost me $1.20 to make it home. I will not do that. So yeah, and I put the in the chat on Zoom. I put the link there. I'll also text it to you guys personally on the app as well. But yeah, he talked about, it's crazy to see, and it's interesting too. One thing that came up as well is there was a greater reduction in cravings in the female people he worked with than the males, which really surprised me too. And I'm curious, and I also had the greatest retention long term because it kind of helps regulate those things and kind of teach you all those skills and perspective as far as hunger goes and eating.
There's a reduction in cravings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as well as we can quantify. It's hard to quantify subjective measures like that, but given the measures that they had best, because effectively what they do for stuff like that is they have a series of questions that they do to try to quantify the amount of craving someone has. And then they put that through a board or people who are proved that, hey, this actually measures what you're saying it measures. So it's actually like a pretty well documented and quantified series of questions. And then they run people through tests with those. So it's not just like, hey, do you have cravings? They ask like, because they pretty much say like, hey, you need to have X number of questions that actually ask this question in X amount of different ways. So that way we can actually get an objective measure of this thing that you're saying that you're measuring. So the questions they use for subjective studies like that are still the best we can given subjective data. But yeah, as best we can measure something like that, it showed that it decreased quite a bit amount. All right.
You mean intermittent fasting or?
Intermittent fasting, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
For those reasons you mentioned, it's like your ghrelin will go down, you have a better tolerance for hunger. And obviously a lot of people who are, there's some, you have to control for some groups because most people who are looking to do some sort of change their diet like that are probably also adding in more whole foods. It's kind of like when they do studies on like vegans and they're like, well, someone who cares enough to go vegan is probably someone who's going to make those other changes as well. So there's like some mitigating factors that'll affect that too. So I'm sure changing the whole foods also, and them already being health conscious, are things that made them want to make those changes. And so the cravings went down. But there is also something about it where, you know, it regulates blood sugar levels. And when you make those changes, again, your gut microbiome reacts in a way that makes you crave those things less too. So it's just a compounding effect of many different factors. But all we know as well is that independent of all those things, whether those things occur as well or not, when someone does the intermittent fasting, it also helps reduce the cravings. If that made any sense.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Well, alrighty, guys. You guys can hang out with Noah a little bit if he so chooses. I have to go grill the steak for the kiddos.
I'll have to go.
But this was fun. Thanks for coming. Invite your friends.
Appreciate you all. Take care, guys. Thanks so much.
Take care. Thank you.
Good night.